Young people in Albuquerque have lots of things they need to do every day, but if they aren't old enough to drive or don't have a car, how do they get to school, work, or community activities? Together for Brothers is a local organization led by young men of color. They conducted a survey of youth across the city about how bus passes might help them get to school, work, or other community activities. Now, other cities like Denver and Phoenix are also experimenting with cards that cover a range of access to city services, like pools, libraries, or buses. Producer Sarah Gustava sat down recently with 3 leaders from Together for Brothers to learn more.
I'm joined in the studio today by Baruch Campos. He also works at Enlace Comunitario. Thanks for being here. We have Jacob Oligir, an incoming senior at Albuquerque High. Thanks for joining us, Jacob. And Mahdi Husseini, he's an incoming junior at Highland High School. Thank you for being here. Jacob, I'm going to start with you. Together for Brothers led a health impact assessment to measure the need for bus passes for young people in Albuquerque. Who'd you talk to?
Dang. So it was weird because we didn't when we first got our research team all put together a year ago, we kind of made this plan. It was a media advocacy plan, I think. Yeah, we went through a whole training on how to do HIAs, and I think that's what it's called. And it was basically all right, we need to identify who we need to talk to first, and then so we started thinking of our district representatives and stuff, and then big stakeholders is what we would call them. And it was just kind of who do we need to talk to, and what is their impact on this, and how can they how can we help them help us, type thing.
Mahdi, who are some of the folks that you reached out to?
I reached out to young men of color, and I was going to farmer markets and bus stops and summer school at Highland High School and Sandia High School.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of refugee kids who were going to Highland High School, and there were teachers who was helping them to take a survey for us, and it was pretty good to have them in our survey.
Yeah. And refugee students are coming from all parts of Albuquerque to Highland High School.
Yes. They were coming from all international district and West Cassia and the highest. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty good because most of refugee was from Tanzania, Black African, mm-hmm. And they were pretty good, but they didn't understand some part of surveys. But we helped them. I had other friend his name was John Claude. He was helping us to translate the all survey in Swahili for them. It was pretty good.
Yeah, language is an important part of getting people's perspective into surveys like that. Yes. Baruch, who did you reach out to?
So very similarly to Mahdi, I reached out to young men of color, also some community partners that we have that are already working with our young people in our communities. We also reached out to city officials and district officials. Me personally, I talked to Ms. Hart, who's in my district, who manages kind of my district. So.
Yeah. And so what are some of the things that you heard from people in the surveys? What did they talk about when it comes to the need to get places on the bus?
So one of the things that we heard, we did surveys, we also did focus groups. So we have a lot of quantitative and qualitative data. So one of the things that I heard a lot, which really hit home for me, was access to education was a big part of it, and access to employment. So a lot of our young people that we surveyed said that they would be more likely to look and find a job, right? To find and keep a job. And because a lot of the time young people don't, have access to a ride, right? So they told us it was very important that public transportation for them to have access to it.
And how would a bus pass be different than paying every time with a single fare?
So we know that the communities that we surveyed, which we were very intentional of serving young men of color who lived in the International District and lived at the Westgate District, because we know that those are 2 of the most transit-dependent communities and some of the more lower income families. And so a free bus pass would really significantly we're talking about equity when we talk about free bus passes for young people who might not have the same opportunities as other young people that live in different communities. So a free bus pass would really greatly increase their chance of, 1, using the bus and actually being able to get around town when their family, right? A lot of our families don't have multiple vehicles. Sometimes we rely on one vehicle in our family. So paying out of pocket every day, it really adds up for these young people.
Absolutely. And Jacob, lots of young folks are involved in organizations around town, like Working Classroom, where people learn about the arts. How does that fit into this equation about helping young people also connect with community in different ways?
So basically, like with this whole like proposed policy of like making like public transportation free for youth, it's like it branches out like off to more things than just like, you know, like, oh, the kids can get around easier and like they don't have to rely on their parents and stuff. It branches out to like a whole different like spectrum of things. Like if a youth has access to public transportation, they have more access to like recreational opportunities, educational opportunities, and like things like recreational opportunities, like playing soccer. They can develop hobbies, and then that goes on to like a whole nother discussion on professional development. And then educational opportunities, they have the opportunity to like, you know, it's just like better themselves all around, and they can create healthy habits. And then, dang, what was our health determinants? Yeah.
And it sounds like folks could, young people could make a commitment to be part of a particular program. It's kind of hard to make a commitment if you're not sure you can get there every week or get there at a set day and time.
That's true. It's like it was in our survey. So in our survey, it was like this kind of like, this is for employment kind of, but I guess it kind of can relate to anything because employment is kind of like a commitment. In our survey, it was kind of like, I mean, it was like, it wasn't kind of, it said like, more than like 71% of young men of color that took our survey said that they would be more likely to get a job and or keep a job if they had more access to public transportation or like better transportation in general. And it's like, if you take that concept, and it's kind of like employment is kind of a commitment, right? But like also showing up to class is another commitment. So like those principles is just kind of like they would be more likely to get a job or keep a job, and they would also be likely to like take classes like or keep going to those classes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And Madi, you guys have been working on this for a while, but ABQ Ride, the city bus system, is giving away youth passes in June and July this year as kind of a pilot program. What did you think about that, getting started this year so quickly?
I think so. It's pretty good. It's a good opportunity for all youths in Albuquerque. They can go to every place they want to go. They can have more access to activities and recreation and education, because most of people right now taking CNM classes or dual credit classes or summer school classes. So it's a pretty good opportunity for all youths in Albuquerque. They can use it for all things they need it, because most of houses or most of people doesn't have like transportation at home. So they can use city bus to go place to place or go to job or go to school.
Yeah. And Baruch, how is Together for Brothers going to make the case for making that year-round, making that permanent?
So as you mentioned before, we have around the city, we're helping the city distribute around 1,500 bus passes for young people in Albuquerque for what they're calling Phase 1. And we're working together in a youth bus pass team with the city that include a lot of different partners, such as APS, the recreation centers, and a lot of the libraries also, and other recreational facilities. And we're distributing these bus passes to kind of see what the impact is that young people, what are the young people using it for? How is this benefiting the young people who are using it, right? And so we're really hoping to see kind of some type of outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we also have a young people working this summer with us that we're calling the crew, and we're also hoping to kind of follow up with those young people who do have those bus passes and see how they've been using it, if it has been effective. And so we're hoping that through those stories we can make a better case to kind of continue this beyond the Phase 1.
Yeah. Denver has a card that gives access to cultural activities, museums, libraries, rec centers, pools, and they're also trying out bus passes as part of that. What kind of difference do you think that would make to not just have bus passes, but have a card that has everything right there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the summer of 2017, the Denver card was one of the main things that we looked at, right? Because when we were talking about how an HIA for young people, what would be something good that would benefit young people in Albuquerque, the Denver card was one of the things that kind of popped up. right? It was like, okay, we want something similar to that. And the Denver card, what it does, it pretty much gives young people who are residents to Denver access to recreational facilities in Denver. And so something like that in Albuquerque, I feel will really benefit the health outcomes of our young people who might not have the same access and opportunities, right? Especially young men of color who have some of the lowest opportunities and especially in low income neighborhoods. So having access to, for example, the pools and getting young people out to actually be able to access museums, that would greatly benefit not just the young people's health, but the families in general, right? Again, we're talking about who are the young people who need it, who are the young people who can't typically access our facilities, and give them more access.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Would that make a big difference?
If we had something like the My Denver card over here in Albuquerque,
Yeah.
like definitely, like think about it, like you're giving like kids like an opportunity, or it's kind of like a declaration of independence. Like, anyways, it's just like if we had something like the My Denver card over here in Albuquerque, I feel like just like neighborhoods and communities will be like healthier overall because you have youth being more productive, and like if like this whole like My Denver card came to Albuquerque and was promoted the correct way and execution was flawless, like youth would be more productive, you know, like healthier. Like if you have a bus pass or you have a way to get to the gym, then you can go work out and you can get like that nice bod you want, like, you know. And it's like just communities would be healthier and more productive.
Yeah. Santa Fe does have a youth bus pass as well. So Madi, if we go beyond a bus pass and we do other efforts to make the buses safe and accessible for young people, what are some changes you think we could make that would be a good thing?
I think so if we have like those access in Albuquerque, probably all youth will be on the bus every day, every night. Maybe they will love all these city buses because most of people, they scared because like people are dangerous because the city is dangerous. So that's why I think so if we have like safety buses or safe like clean buses and anything, if like absolutely all youths will be on the bus like every day. They don't need like cars or anything because it's more healthier, it's more access to everything. They will be like walking around, hanging out with friends. They don't need to pay for gases and all insurance, that stuff.
Yeah. Bruce, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've heard a lot from young people through focus groups is that less than 1/3 of the young people that we surveyed didn't ride the bus regularly. So one of the biggest things was that a lot of them didn't feel safe on the bus, right? There was also an issue in certain neighborhoods, particularly in the Westgate, where there's not a lot of bus routes, right? So there's a lot of different things that we've heard from young people, like the bus routes, having more bus routes, or even having the bus come to their neighborhood, because sometimes that's difficult. Some young people have to walk 15, 30 minutes away from their home to get to the nearest bus stop. And safety has definitely been an issue, like Madi explained, is a lot of young people don't feel safe in the bus. So that's something that we really would like to look into.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ask like what would we want to see change?
Yeah.
Yo, so like ABQ Ride should like pay me for this because like I swear they'll probably pay someone to think about ideas to change to like, so like the main purpose that ABQ Ride kind of like, I mean the main problem they kind of face is like, oh, ridership. Like first and foremost, like how are we supposed to get youth on the bus since like there's like this negative narrative that's been going on, like it's not safe, like there's people experiencing homelessness on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like, I think it'd be cool that like if they made like the bus more like a train, you know what I mean? Where it's like there's outlets and then like instead of like all the seats facing forward, like, you know, you have like seats like facing towards like the wall and then there's like a table and then it's like that'll increase ridership because I mean if it goes back to like putting Wi-Fi into the buses, which we already do have buses that have Wi-Fi, and then you make it kind of like a workspace, that'll increase ridership for youth because it'd be like another place, it'd be like an alternative to like the local cafe or like to the Starbucks, you know what I mean? And it's like not only that, it's like it'd create like a better, safer environment because if you have college students on the bus, then like I don't know, like people are more likely to feel safer around like college students because it's like, you know, they actually have something that they don't want to lose. I don't know. I don't mean to be mean. Jeez. Can we like auto tune that so I sound a little bit nicer? Like
It's a really creative idea. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's good to talk about ideas and opportunities. And thank you so much for coming in to talk about the research that you've done and the work you're doing in the community. We'll have to have you guys back and get an update later on.